Do you want to invest in industrial real estate? Want to get started with an LOI? Watch this video for a quick legal walkthrough about how you can submit great LOIs in this market. Ron from Ronald, Rohde Law, and if you follow this channel, you know that I love industrial. It's a asset class that I live, breathe, invest in, and we do a lot of industrial work. So one of the things that a lot of people have asked me for is, Ron, can I get a template LOI? And in this video, we're going to walk through a sample document that I'll put a link for so you can download it for free. And it's really just going to help you understand each of the entries and why you should change certain things, as well as the importance of a strong LOI in the initial offer. All right. So I'm going to assume that an LOI like this is probably either off market, maybe it's unrepresented, but at the end of the day, you don't have a broker drafting it for you for whatever reason. What are the terms that I include in an LOI, but don't make it so long that it reads like a contract? You need to be able to get the seller to agree to your critical deal points, your deal killers, so to speak, and then you can work on the PSA afterwards. So that's my tip is you want the LOI as short as possible to convey all of your deal killers. All right, so let's jump into it. Just got some letterhead. I do think it's important that you have some formal letterhead. You want them, this is your first impression with the seller. And so you want them to get a sense of confidence and professionalism because this may be the very first written interaction or, the highest level of actually making an offer. So you want to make sure that you put some effort into it because it will make a difference. You only get one shot at a first impression. All right, so let's go. The date, pretty standard. Address it properly. I can't tell you enough. It does kind of bother sellers if you don't go through that effort to even look up the county assessor or the property district records. And if you can't name the seller correctly, or if you name a person versus an LLC, address, again, you can just use whatever address is on file. I don't think people care about that, but the name, there is some importance. So you want to make sure you spell that correctly. Letter of intent to purchase, for this is going to be an industrial property. So the acreage is really pretty important because there may be multiple parcels. It may be an industrial complex. So you just want to specify that the address may encompass multiple lots, but you're interested in X percentage or X acres of that address. Letter of intent to purchase, terms and conditions, real property owned by seller. So here we have 10 acres of land, approximately 40,000 of improvements. Buyer name. This is important because they're probably going to Google it. As soon as they receive this, they're just going to Google a buyer name, and you want to know what that online reputation looks like. Seller, again, just reiterate it because it makes it easier for your lawyer later to draft a PSA if you put them repeated here. Purchase price. That's, cut to the chase. I really don't think that if you're too far off and the purchase price is not there, why waste either side's time? Earnest money, again, very important to show a level of commitment, a level of financial wherewithal, and a strong earnest money deposit is good. Now, escrow holdback. This one is interesting because as I'm writing this video at the end of 2022, where there's a little bit of a disconnect between buyers and sellers, the interest rates have gone up, the economy is a little bit shaky. Escrow holdbacks are much more common now to allow the buyer to pay a higher price if certain financial or other milestones are met on the property. So the seller says, oh yeah, it's great. You will collect X, you will generate Y. You say, okay, that's fine. I'm not underwriting that same collections, but if that does happen, then we'll release an extra 500,000, extra million or $2 million. And that is really, it's a little bit more complicated, but it gets deals done. It gets them under contract, you close, and then you have this money in escrow. It's a little bit more complicated and you still have this relationship, but it's a win-win. If the buyer does realize that level of income, the seller gets to realize a higher value for his sale price. So definitely consider escrow or some type of deferred compensation based on milestones. Talk to your lawyer about how to draft those and make sure you're protected. Due diligence, we kind of have a standard 60 days for an industrial of this size, would maybe have 45 to 60 days. We usually are still seeing one-time extensions for a fee. So this one is non-refundable, but it could easily be refundable, but it's additional earnest money. I think we would just call it additional earnest money, right? You don't have to spell out that it's refundable. Due diligence. You should have a list of due diligence materials. Again, it's going to depend on your deal. I can attach one as well. Drive in, dock high. Again, you just want to confirm everything that you've kind of done your research on and hear it from the seller and see the quality of their documents. So closing is 30 days from the DD. Again, pretty standard. You could maybe push it to 15, but with lenders, if you have debt that are a little jittery right now, you know, having a long closing period is not unexpected. So splitting fees, PSA within 10 days, confidentiality, exclusivity, non-solicitation, pretty standard. This is kind of a catch-all savings. I recommend that you read this, you kind of understand, because there is some issue about LOIs potentially being binding. And obviously it's against one party's clear intent, but there are some courts that have held certain LOIs can be binding, because if you have a confidentiality clause, you're intending for that other party to be bound. And so it's sometimes harder for judges to separate out, okay, you have this contract, you want to be bound by clauses 4 and 6, but you don't want to be bound by 1 through 3. That doesn't make sense. Either this whole contract is binding and the confidentiality is binding, or the whole thing is not binding. And so it can be a little bit of a gray area on LOIs. I've posted about it before, but anyway, you should understand it. Counterparts, that's all fine. You know, this for e-sign. I would sign it from you as a buyer here and put a clean signature block. And then you're just waiting for the seller to submit from their end, and they have 5 days, or they can counter, which may be a natural result. But that's it. You know, I think that an LOI is a little bit unique for industrial, solely just based on the leverage, the type of seller, whether they're sophisticated or not. If I was submitting an LOI, say, to a less sophisticated seller, I would cut this down to 2 whole pages, including the signatures, because there doesn't need to be all of this detail on a unsophisticated seller. They're not necessarily going to read all of these line items. But if you are offering out to a sophisticated seller, you will want to specify all of these things. Otherwise, you're going to set yourself up just for a legal battle down the road, and you may kill your deal when you suddenly say, you know, hey, escrow agent fees and base title policy. They're going to say, oh, no, we never pay, you know, title policy. Well, that may kill your deal on a $30,000 title policy. So buyer beware, understand who your audience is, but this is a great template to start. Think about that escrow holdback, smash that like button if you found it useful, and subscribe for more industrial real estate content.